It started as an innocent weekend, just me and my two brothers alone in the house for the first time in years. Mom and Dad had left town for a wedding, trusting us with a kind of freedom we rarely got growing up. The three of us, bonded by blood but scattered by life, were supposed to spend the time catching up, laughing about old times, and maybe a little harmless mischief. But by Sunday evening, I found myself staring at a secret none of us were ready to confront. The air in the room was thick, heavy with unspoken words, as we avoided each other's gaze. How had it come to this? I replayed the last 2 days in my head, searching for the moment everything began to unravel. What started as an ordinary weekend turned into something none of us would ever forget. I'm Ethan, the middle child. My older brother, Aaron, is the dependable one, always playing the role of the protector. He's the kind of person who steps in to fix things before anyone else notices they're broken. Then there's our younger brother, Liam, the wild card. Charismatic and impulsive, Liam has a knack for finding trouble, though he always manages to charm his way out of it. We've always been close, even as life pulled us in different directions. Aaron into a high-powered corporate job, me into a modest career in journalism, and Liam into a string of odd gigs that seemed to fit his restless energy. This weekend felt like a rare opportunity to reconnect. Our childhood home, a cozy 2-story house nestled on the edge of a sleepy town, hadn't changed much over the years. The living room still had the same plaid sofa we used to wrestle on as kids, and the kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee. The only difference now was the quiet. Mom and Dad weren't there to fill the space with their constant chatter and gentle bickering. Aaron arrived first, as punctual as ever. He brought a bottle of expensive bourbon, saying it was for old time's sake, though I knew it was his way of showing he cared. Liam rolled in late as usual, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, and a grin that made you forget you were annoyed. I could tell he hadn't changed much, same easy confidence, same air of mystery that always made you wonder what he was hiding. The first night was perfect. We ordered pizza, drank bourbon, and laughed until our sides hurt, swapping stories about our lives and reminiscing about the pranks we used to pull. For a moment, it felt like we'd slipped back in time, like we were kids again with no responsibilities or secrets. But there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't ignore. Liam seemed distracted, his usual charm dimmed by something he wasn't saying. Aaron, always observant, kept throwing him subtle looks, like he was trying to gauge whether to push or let it go. And then there was me, stuck in the middle as always, trying to figure out what I was missing. The house felt different the next morning, the warmth from the night before replaced by an uneasy silence. The light streaming through the kitchen window was too bright, almost intrusive, as if it were exposing something we'd all been trying to hide. I didn't know it yet, but that weekend was about to change everything I thought I knew about my family and myself. It started with a simple question over breakfast. Aaron, stirring his coffee with deliberate slowness, looked up at Liam and said, "So how's work?" Liam paused mid-bite, the fork hovering inches from his mouth. His expression didn't change, but the energy in the room shifted. "It's fine," he said casually, though his voice carried a defensive edge. Aaron didn't let up, still bouncing around. "Or have you found something more stable?" I cringed at Aaron's tone. He wasn't trying to be cruel, but he had a way of prodding that always set Liam on edge. "Aaron," I interjected, trying to steer the conversation elsewhere, "why don't you tell us about that big project you mentioned last night?" But Liam wasn't letting it slide. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, setting his fork down. His easy grin was gone, replaced by a sharpness I hadn't seen in years. Aaron sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's not an attack, Liam. I'm just saying you're almost 30. Maybe it's time to think about your future." "My future's fine," Liam snapped. "Not everyone wants to live in a suit and tie, Aaron. And not everyone can afford to keep winging it forever," Aaron shot back, his voice rising. I sat there, caught between them, my appetite gone. This wasn't the first time they'd butted heads, but it felt different, like there was something deeper fueling the tension. "Okay, stop," I said firmly. "We're not doing this. Not this weekend." They both fell silent, though the tension lingered. Liam stood abruptly, grabbing his coffee and muttering something about needing fresh air. The screen door slammed behind him, leaving Aaron and me alone in the awkward quiet. "What's his problem?" Aaron muttered, leaning back in his chair. "You know exactly what it is," I said. "You always push him, Aaron. Why can't you just let him be?" Aaron sighed again, his shoulders slumping. "Because he's my brother, Ethan. I'm trying to help him, even if he doesn't see it that way." I wanted to believe him, but something about the way he said it felt off. Aaron was always the fixer, but this time, his concern seemed almost personal. Later that afternoon, I found Liam in the garage, sitting on an old workbench with a cigarette dangling from his lips. He didn't look up as I approached, his gaze fixed on the dusty floor. "You okay?" I asked, leaning against the wall. He shrugged. "Just tired of Aaron acting like he knows what's best for me." "He means well," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Liam finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You ever feel like you're carrying something so heavy you can't breathe?" His words caught me off guard. "What are you talking about?" He hesitated, as if deciding whether to say more. But before he could answer, the garage door creaked open and Aaron walked in. "There you are," Aaron said, his tone a mix of irritation and relief. "Can we talk?" Liam's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Sure. Let's talk." The three of us ended up in the living room, the tension between Aaron and Liam crackling like static electricity. I sat on the edge of the couch, unsure what to expect. "I'm worried about you," Aaron began, his voice softer now. "You've been acting off." "What's going on, Liam?" Liam laughed bitterly. "You want to know what's going on? Fine. Let's talk about your perfect life, Aaron. Let's talk about how you're not as squeaky clean as you want everyone to think." Aaron's face darkened. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "You think I don't know?" Liam shot back, his voice rising. "You think I haven't seen you sneaking around? The late nights, the lies." I froze, my heart racing. "Wait, what are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Liam turned to me, his expression filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "Aaron's been cheating on his wife." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I looked at Aaron, searching his face for denial, for anything that would prove Liam wrong. But Aaron didn't say a word. "Is it true?" I asked, my voice trembling. Aaron's silence was all the answer I needed. The room seemed to shrink, the air pressing against my chest as I waited for Aaron to say something, anything. But he didn't. He just stared at the floor, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping his knees like he was holding himself together by sheer force. "Aaron," I said again, my voice sharper now, "is it true? Are you cheating on Rachel?" Finally he looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place, shame, maybe, or regret. "It's not as simple as that," he said quietly. Liam let out a harsh laugh. "Not as simple as that? You're married, Aaron. You have 2 kids. What's not simple about it?" Aaron turned to him, his face hardening. "You don't know what it's like. You don't have a family to provide for, a wife who expects you to be perfect all the time. You don't." "Don't you dare," Liam interrupted, his voice rising. "Don't you dare act like this is about them. This is about you. About your choices." I sat there, torn between anger and disbelief, watching as the 2 of them went at it. My brothers, who were supposed to be my anchors, my constants, were unraveling right in front of me. "Stop it," I said louder this time. "Both of you, just stop." They fell silent, though the tension between them was still palpable. I turned to Aaron, my heart pounding. "You owe us the truth," I said. "No more deflecting. No more excuses." Aaron ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders slumping like the weight of the world had finally caught up with him. "It started a year ago," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "Work was stressful, and Rachel and I were fighting all the time. I felt like I was drowning, like I couldn't do anything right, and that justifies cheating." Liam snapped. "No," Aaron said, shaking his head. "It doesn't. But it happened anyway. There was this woman at work, someone who listened, who made me feel seen." One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was in over my head. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I struggled to process his words, to reconcile this version of Aaron with the brother I thought I knew. "Does Rachel know?" I asked finally. Aaron shook his head. "No. And she can't. It would destroy her." "Destroy her?" Liam repeated, his voice dripping with incredulity. "You already destroyed her, Aaron. She just doesn't know it yet." Aaron flinched, but he didn't argue. I leaned back against the couch, my mind racing. I thought about Rachel, about the way her face lit up whenever Aaron walked into the room. I thought about their kids, my niece and nephew, and the family they'd built together. And I thought about the lies that were now threatening to tear it all apart. "This isn't just about you, Aaron," I said finally, my voice trembling. "It's about all of us. You lied to Rachel, but you lied to us too. You made us believe you were someone we could look up to." Aaron's head dropped, and for the first time, he looked truly defeated. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he said quietly. "But you did," Liam said, his voice softer now but no less firm. "And you don't get to run from that." For a moment, none of us spoke. The weight of Aaron's confession hung heavy in the air, and I could feel the cracks in our family widening with every passing second. I glanced at Liam, who was staring at Aaron with an intensity one couldn't quite place. There was anger there, yes, but also something deeper. Hurt, disappointment, maybe even fear. And then I looked at Aaron, my once unshakable older brother, now reduced to a man drowning in his own mistakes. I realized then that there were no easy answers, no quick fixes. This was our reality now, and none of us would leave that house the same. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Finally I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper. "What are you going to do, Aaron?" He looked up at me, his eyes red and tired. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I need to figure it out. For Rachel, for the kids, for all of us." And for the first time that weekend, I saw a flicker of something in Aaron's eyes. Hope, maybe, or determination. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur. We didn't talk about it again, not directly anyway. The air between us was heavy, filled with all the things we weren't ready to say. Aaron spent most of Sunday in his room, while Liam and I pretended to be interested in an old movie playing on TV. The laughter from the first night felt like a distant memory, replaced by a silence none of us knew how to break. When it was time to leave, Aaron stood by the door, his overnight bag slung over his shoulder. "I'll handle it," he said quietly, looking at me and then at Liam. "I don't know how yet, but I'll handle it." Liam didn't say anything, just nodded curtly before heading to his car. I lingered for a moment, unsure if I should say something more. "You're not alone in this," I said finally. "But you have to be honest, with her and with yourself." Aaron nodded, his eyes filled with a gratitude he didn't put into words. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the house that suddenly felt much too big. Driving home that evening, I couldn't shake the weight of it all. The weekend had started as a chance to reconnect, but instead, it had exposed the fragile threads holding us together. For as long as I could remember, Aaron had been the glue of our family, the one we all looked up to. Seeing him broken, fallible, was a reminder that even the strongest among us carry secrets and scars. I thought about Liam, too, his anger, his hurt. He and Aaron had always clashed, but I realized now that beneath his frustration was a deep longing for Aaron's approval. Maybe this revelation had hurt him most of all. As for me, I felt torn between anger and compassion, between wanting to protect my brother and holding him accountable. Families are messy, complicated things, built on love but tested by secrets. I don't know what Aaron will do next, or how Rachel will react if she ever learns the truth. What I do know is that the bonds we share, though strained, aren't broken. They're bent, yes, but maybe that's what it means to be family, to carry the weight of each other's mistakes and still find a way forward. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized something else. Sometimes, the hardest truths aren't the ones we discover about others. They're the ones we discover about ourselves.